welcome to another round of our Insights interview series. Obviously, I'm in front of the camera for once, and we'll see how this goes. But behind the camera is one of our principal dancers, Katherine Eppink, and she has been taking over a lot of our marketing all season. So she is going to interview me about Program 3, and I don't even know what the questions are. So we'll see how this goes.
Perfect. Thank you for introducing. You did half my job right there.
Great. This is what we do.
Yay! So we are taking a look at Program 3, Choreographer's Notebook, featuring Samuel Kurkjian. And Samuel was a principal dancer for Boston Ballet.
Yes.
He joined them really early on. I want to say their 4th season.
Yes. And
later.
Yes. Their first, I'm literally taking the words out of her mouth already.
It's okay.
He was their first resident choreographer as well.
Yes. And he was ballet master for a while, first resident choreographer, just as you said. He eventually started his own company, Boston Repertory Ballet, and then he was a long-term faculty member at Walnut Hill.
Yes.
Right, and you, if you know anything about Adam's background, he attended Walnut Hill. Can you talk to us about where your paths crossed and what was Sam like?
Whoa. So I went to Walnut Hill in the fall of 1998, and the first time I met Sam was in all the new dancers had to take a placement class to see what level they were going to be in. And I don't remember how many new students there were that year, but we all were sitting in the largest dance studio at Walnut Hill, and the director of the dance program came in and goes, "Kids, we're just gonna wait for a few more minutes. Mr. Kurkjian's on his way." And I had read his bio, like I knew that there were male faculty members at the school, but something weird like clicked in my mind. He was my very first male ballet teacher. Even at summer programs or anything like that, I had never had a male ballet teacher. And I didn't know what to expect, hadn't seen a picture of him. And he walked in the studio, and he wasn't old at the time, but the only way I can describe Sam when I knew him is he sort of looked like Yertle the Turtle, like bald little head, like glasses, and he sort of had this face. And he came in joking. I don't remember what he said, but he sat down, and I was like, this guy seems pretty cool, like not intimidating at all. So that was the first time I met him. And immediately I started taking men's class from him. He taught our technique class. I was placed in the lowest level because I really hadn't had a lot of ballet at that point. And he basically, in no uncertain terms, told me that I got into the school because I was a boy and I would have to work very, very hard to get anywhere in ballet. He said it with love, but yeah, he was a character in many different ways. I think that the best way to sum up what he was like is years later when I was here in Vero and we started the Riverside Dance Festival. The very first company that we brought was another faculty member's modern dance company from Walnut Hill, Prometheus Dance. So the modern teacher's name was Diane Arvanites, and we brought her company, and the very first day she heard me, she hadn't seen me in 10, 12 years maybe, the very first day I was talking to the kids in the Riverside Dance Festival, like I was done giving my morning speech about do this, don't do that, keep your nose clean, all that sort of stuff. And Diane grabbed me and she goes, "I don't know if you were always like this, but it was like hearing Sam talk." So if you could take that for the better or worse parts of my personality, it doesn't matter. We ended up being a lot alike. The humor, the sarcasm, I would like to say the attention to detail and quality, but the studio was always full of fun and laughter when Sam was there.
Oh, I feel like I know him.
It's very similar.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you said he was your first male teacher, because when I look at your two careers, Sam was a dancer, he was obviously a gifted choreographer, and then he eventually went on to find his own company and build that from the ground up, which mirrors your career in many ways. Did you feel like there was anything in particular that you drew as inspiration from Sam? Was it his quirkiness? Was it his attention to detail? Was there anything specifically you were drawn to? It's
really hard to pin that down because the more, not just with this program, we now have, this will be, German dances will be our third work of Sam's that we are bringing into our repertoire. But the more I get inside his ballets, the more I think about him and his career, it's really hard to pull even a small number of things. He was such a giant influence in my life. And again, as Diane said, I don't know if I was always this way or meeting Sam like brought all of this stuff out in me. I can say that, I mean, there are a ton of lessons and a ton of things he influenced me on. The real influence that I feel I took with me was not necessarily as a director, because I never knew him as a director. I knew him as a choreographer and a teacher. Yes, a lot of my teaching style and even some of the combinations that I rely on have relied on throughout the years are directly from Sam. But I've come into contact with so many more teachers since then that it's hard to pull out the exact things. The major influence from Sam was as a choreographer. And he didn't even teach the choreography class. I signed up for the choreography class at Walnut Hill, and that was taught by Diane. And she taught me more about composition because she was very modern and contemporary oriented. And I made it very clear to her from the very beginning, if I was going to choreograph, I wanted it to be ballet. And she sort of went, great, another ballet choreographer, just what we need. So she influenced a lot, like composition and stagecraft and that side of my choreography. But Sam actually invited me into the studio as he was working, whether he was staging works or choreographing something new, very, very early on in my experience at Walnut Hill. All I wanted was to be near him, to be in the studios as much as possible, while other kids were going to Boston for the weekend or even, just hanging out with each other and partying. Like, I would go on a Sunday when no one was in the studio and either dance or work on my choreography. But Sam, instead of sort of telling me how to choreograph, he would invite me in to his rehearsals and I would just sit on the floor next to him. He would be on his chair, usually with a bag of microwave popcorn, like just popping the popcorn and like offering me some. I'm like, I don't want that. And I don't think that they want you to be eating while you're doing this. And I would just watch him work. He had choreographed all of Walnut Hill's Nutcracker. And as soon as casting went up in the first year, I asked to understudy as much as I could. I sat in on all the rehearsals I could. And then with our spring performances, the very first spring I was there, they had programmed Chopin variations. And like just sitting there and watching him stage that ballet and watching the way he moved people through space, the way he matched the movements to the music, and the way he dealt with the dancers, like it totally changed my life. I had not, like I said, I signed up for the choreography class and I had been choreographing musicals before I ever got to Walnut Hill. But I didn't put two and two together that you could be a ballet choreographer or a dance choreographer. Again, I was just out of Northwestern Vermont. I mean, I was taking ballet like maybe 3 times a week and doing musicals at school. Like, I didn't know. I wanted to be a ballet dancer, but I didn't know what that meant. So Sam, rather than saying this is what you have to do to get there, either as a dancer or a choreographer, he just allowed me to sort of take it all in. And that really extended, when we got to the student choreography concert that first year, he gave me blunt feedback in no uncertain terms. And it really extended throughout my career. Like, I would call him and say, well, do you think this move to this company is the right thing? He wouldn't tell me yes or no, but he would give me great advice. I would send him things that I had choreographed and he would, again, give suggestions. And then at some point, he just started saying, that was great. And that was the biggest thing for me. I'm like, there's no suggestions at this point. So he was really encouraging in that way. So I think the greatest influence was definitely on my choreography.
It's really interesting and wonderful to hear you talk about Sam because he clearly was a huge mentor to you. And I feel like it's important to say that now you have been a mentor to so many dancers, and I'm not shy about saying that you were my Sam in inspiring me in my career. So I feel like I'm talking about my ballet grandpa right now.
Your ballet grandpa. That's
it's really sweet to hear you talk about.
Yeah, and I think that if there was one other influence that we haven't talked about yet is he really taught me about the dance world, and he gave me expectations in terms of, I expect you to go and see as much dance as possible. he said it could be terrible, it could be the worst, it could be in a vacant lot somewhere. He's, I don't care. You learn as much from seeing something that you don't like and being able to articulate that as you do from something that just changes your life because it's so spectacular. That was a big expectation. And the other expectation was sort of the, the pay it forward philosophy. He said, if you get to do this, you then have to make sure that you leave a path for other people, whether it's dancers, whether it's choreographers, audiences, to be able to see works that you enjoyed. And that was really clear. And honestly, I haven't ever thought of it in this way before, but in starting Ballet Vero Beach, I think that was a barrier for me. Most people watching this know that I never wanted to start a ballet company. It's too much work, it's too hard, it's too stressful, and it's not brain surgery. If it was brain surgery, then you could be like, oh, okay, this stress is all worth it. But with Sam and those expectations, they were really ringing in my ears before I started Ballet Vero Beach, because I knew that if we were going to do this, there was a huge level of responsibility on my shoulders. Not bad responsibility, but I wasn't going to do it halfway. I wanted to do it in a way that Sam and all the other people that paved the way for my career would be proud of.
Well, I think that you're honoring him in that way, and he would certainly be proud of you.
I hope so.
Let's talk about the 3 pieces that are specifically programmed for April. Yes. So Chopin Variations was the first rep that we at Ballet Vero Beach added to our full collection. And then quickly you added WC Suite. And this year you're adding a 3rd ballet, German dances. Yeah. Can you talk about each piece and why you selected them for Ballet Vero Beach?
Yeah. It's funny that, we're going down this memory lane, and it's funny to talk about Sam, because really I only intensely knew him for 2 years, my junior and senior year of high school. Yes, we stayed in contact. Yes, I would go back to school to visit him. Camilo got to meet him. But it's a very narrow version of Sam that I know. I know that Walnut Hill version of Sam, whereas there are dancers that dance with him for decades and have the knowledge of 50 or 60 ballets. I knew when I started the company that our first full program had to include Chopin because several reasons. To me, it still remains my favorite piece in our rep. It's that good. The choreography, the musicality is that good. It represents neoclassical ballet so well, and it represents my aesthetic for what we do so well, that I knew that had to be the first piece. The flip side of that is it's also an incredible training vehicle for young dancers or professionals alike. Whether you're in the corps, whether you're one of the soloists, or whether you're one of the principals, it teaches you so much about how to be on stage. It teaches things about spacing. It teaches things about energy, attack, managing stamina. It's only a 12 to 14 minute piece, but the tracks are hard. It is difficult. It's not an easy piece. So I knew if we could really put that out there and draw a line in the sand that this is where we're going, it would be a piece that we would be able to use forever. So when I told Sam we were starting a company, and when I told him I wanted to, bring back his works to the professional stage, because at that point they were only being done at Walnut Hill, and he also taught at Boston Conservatory. His works were not in any company's rep at that point. So I asked him, what would it take for us to buy Chopin outright? And he was very generous. And unfortunately, he was sick and he passed away before we ever premiered Chopin. He knew it was happening, and I had talked to him several times before he was really too sick to know what was going on, but I had said to him that this wasn't the last one that we would do. We would make sure that as many works as I could get my hands on, we would keep them alive for him. So that's been it's been really special to be able to do that, and that's why immediately when Sam passed, I started working with Mikko Niisanen at Boston Ballet, who ironically, we had very similar experiences with Sam, And Miko was really instrumental for caring for Sam when he was sick. And Sam gave him all of the archives of his ballets and said, you know, do with it what you want. So immediately I said to Miko, I said, well, I know Debussy Suite. Debussy Suite was done my second year at Walnut Hill, so it was an obvious choice for our next one. Can I have it? He said, yes. And that's how that one came into the rep. And I think that where Chopin is so cool and classic and structured, and there is so much hierarchy, Debussy is much more casual, just even in the appearance with the women with their hair down. The costumes are much more casual. So it was a really nice counterpart to what we already had. It has gotten harder since then. Miko had, I don't remember how long he had been at Boston Ballet when Sam passed, maybe only 3 or 4 years. You know, Boston Ballet has grown under his leadership leaps and bounds. So it's, you know, and all of the archives are on like VHS or like, I don't even know, reel to reel. They're sitting in a box somewhere. So I've been after Miko for a very long time, and he dug out German dances for me. And I said, well, this is perfect number 3. Unfortunately, we had thought about doing it in spring of 2020. And we all know what happened in spring of 2020. So it is now taken until spring of 2023 to actually put it together and make it happen. And I feel like German dances sort of straddles Chopin and Debussy as somewhere between super casual like Debussy and super formal like Chopin. It's been, I don't even know how to describe the process of putting it together, because I'm reconstructing it from a video from, I think, 1988 Boston Ballet. And the video's like in 2 pieces. You see the last 2 dances first, and then the whole thing is there. But when you get to the last 2 dances in the second one, the sound cuts out. So it's been interesting. It's been a fun challenge, but honestly, having sat with Chopin and Debussy for so long in our rep, and also having sort of the distance and the time away from being a student of Sam's, it's not hard to get inside his ballets at this point. So I've already spoken to Miko about hopefully doing more, because there's a treasure trove, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. But I think that I get excited because he has a whole set of like really, really contemporary works that like I would have no idea. And you're making the face like, wait, what? You just picture classics and point shoes and everything like that. I think he got in trouble at one point for, I can't remember if it was, one of my friends told me, I think it was the ballet company in Maine. He did a Witches of Salem for them, and the witches ended up naked before the burning at the stake scene or something like that. Like, I mean, like,
different Sam
that's a
than I
very
know,
different
but
Sam.
that sounds fascinating.
And then he had this ballet that was quite famous and is mentioned in several books called Speed Zone, which was like a comment on like modern life, very contemporary, like an industrial score. There were set pieces that I'd love to sort of figure out if we can resurrect. But when I started, I always try and commit at least 3 works by a choreographer. So it really is a proud day to get to that point where we have 3 of his ballets, and the 3 ballets are so different. And if we get more in the future, great. If not, I feel like he would be very happy with what we currently have.
It sounds like you're becoming a bit of a repetitor of Sam's.
It's hard. I don't have time for all of this.
Well, we have people ask us all the time how we pass down dances, and that was a good insight into how difficult it is.
Yeah.
Video is obviously very helpful, but if you don't have a reliable video with sound and all of that, it's a lot of knowing the choreographer and what their intentions would have been, so you can fill in the gaps. Or, you know, you obviously were inspired by Sam and around him a lot, and you know what he would have wanted where.
Yeah, and it's bizarre, at least with Sam's work, and there are a few choreographers that I feel that way about. Yves de Boutier is another one, having worked with him, and, you know, we're working on bringing his West Side Story suite to the stage at some point. When I start working on a piece of theirs to stage, immediately there's like this sense of, oh, this feels right. This feels like something Sam would have put together. And that takes me about 75 to 85% of the way, and then you just have to guess on the video, like with German dances. It's 4 couples, and the girl on the left is doing something different than the girl on the right, and the girl on the back is doing something completely different. So you have to go, okay, we're gonna clean it up, and we're gonna make one of those choices the correct one, but without knowing those dancers, like I can look back at the old Walnut Hill tapes and the archives that I have, and I can go, oh, she's doing that and she's doing that. And I know what Sam thought about her and what Sam thought about him. And so I'm going to go with that version because I know how much she liked that person. But without that knowledge, you're looking at, a piece of history, and you can only guess why certain things were changed. In those 2 versions of German dances, there's one of the sections ends with a lift, and one of the videos has the boys carrying the girls all the way off into the wings, and one of them has up and down. The video of the boys carrying the girls into the wings, one of the boys hits the wings with his girl.
Probably not the intended choreography.
Right.
Maybe.
So I said, well, at some point maybe we'll do the full carry off, but right now let's just do the up and down.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with that. He said, let's simplify this at that point.
Yeah.
So,
probably a good call.
probably a good call.
As a dancer, so I've danced both Chopin variations and Debussy suite, and there's something about Sam's work that is incredibly satisfying, and I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. As we're restaging this, I've heard several dancers, both here and in Miami, say, like, this just feels so good to dance. They've likened it to Balanchine's work, where it just makes sense. Is there anything that you can pinpoint that may be the reason that it feels so enjoyable, or even why it's so enjoyable to watch?
Yeah. Someone's going to watch this and I'm going to get in trouble, but I'll say it anyways. So Sam actually studied choreography with George Balanchine on a Ford Foundation fellowship. And that really influenced his musicality, that influenced the way he put steps together. To me, the difference between Balanchine's work and Sam's work is that I'm not saying Balanchine's level of, how do I say this? He was such a cerebral and intelligent choreographer. He could make steps that you wouldn't think of when hearing the music be supremely musical and almost challenge the audience notion of what the musicality was. With Sam, I call his work, or I call the musicality in his work, literal musicality. You will hear a sound that sounds like a ballet step, right? I'm thinking of the coda of Chopin variations, where the principals and the soloists come out, and there are these notes in the piano, but, and it goes with these jumps called entrechacats. So with Sam's work, you can actually say the steps, and they go with the music. There's a lot of Balanchine's work, and I love his musicality. I'm not disparaging Balanchine's musicality, where you really have to get inside the counts, especially the Stravinsky ballets. Like, you know the steps and you know they're musical, and you can then let go of that when you know it and you've rehearsed it. With Sam's, I almost feel like lowbrow is not the right word, but it's one notch below Balanchine in terms of the fact that for an audience, that music dance combination is even more readable. Again, both of them I am huge fans of, but with Sam's, it's a little more generic audience friendly. Even with German dances, there's the whole first section is so, that music sounds skippy, so they're skipping. That music sounds bouncing, so they're bouncing. So I think that's why it's enjoyable to dance. Once you know what it is, you don't have to think too hard about it. The music just pushes you to do everything. And why it's so enjoyable to watch for the audience is that aspect of being able to see it and hear it all at the same time.
Yeah, I think that was put perfectly.
Stop complimenting me, it's too much.
Well, no, it's true. It's not fighting the music.
Right.
It's writing it, and that doesn't mean that it's easy, because
No.
some of those tempos are insane.
No.
It doesn't mean that it's an easy work, and it doesn't mean that the choreography isn't incredibly well thought out. Not anyone can stand there and say, this is what this music is. Obviously, it's these steps. That's a huge gift that he had.
Well, and I also think that, just one more point about that, I think that because aside from his work at Boston Ballet, but even at the time Boston Ballet was a smaller company, he was working with smaller groups than Balanchine was. So one of the difficulties in his works is simply making the patterns sing, as I would say. In Chopin, there are so many times where all 8 cast members are doing differing circles, and if it's not timed perfectly, you don't really see all the swirls and the harmony of it. So that also makes it more difficult, whereas in certain Balanchine's works, there's 30, 40 people in the corps, and the formation is the formation, and the steps are almost simpler because that's a whole different visual. You very rarely want to have 40 or 50 people all doing something different. Like that's a lot for an audience to take in.
Absolutely. Okay, let's tell the people where they can see these beautiful works.
Are you doing it or am I doing it?
It's up to you.
I'll do it. Correct me.
thought you might
Correct
feel
me
that
if I'm wrong. Yeah, giving up control. I'm working on it, ladies and gentlemen. I am working on it. Katherine is doing a fantastic job, by the way, with everything she's taken on this year, in addition to, being one of our leading dancers. So
That's very sweet.
not what I would want to do, but she loves it. Great. So program 3 runs April 14th at 7:30 and April 15th at 2 and 7:30 at the VBH Performing Arts Center. You get to see Debussy Suite and German dances and Chopin all in the same program, a veritable buffet of Sam ballets. And tickets are available at balletverobeach.org. I will make a little ancillary plug that our accessible family-friendly show for this coming program is our The Sleeping Princess, and that is specifically geared for families with young children and folks with differing abilities, and we are doing that Sunday, April 16th at 2 p.m. It's been a great season, y'all. 10 years. You got to come out and finish the party with us strong, so please, please, please get those tickets.
Perfect. Thank you so much for talking with us, Adam. And I want to say again, if Sam were here, he would be so proud of what you've done with Ballet Vero Beach and how you're honoring his works. So thank you, and we'll see you at the shows.
My pleasure. Thank you.